everyone. The dance is the bishop, the tune, the bishop, traditional, 1778. The musicians are Zara Lawler on flute, Julia Hartman on fiddle, Chip Prince on piano. It's from a private CD, the 2013 Playford Ball Practice recording. It's not available commercially. It's nice to see everyone tonight with us. It's great to have you here. I am Darlene Hamilton, and we are the Historical Tea and Dance Society. We have Lindsay Verbal assisting with our program, handling media and our attendee questions. It's nice to have you with us. Questions should be submitted in the chat boxes on both platforms we're on, Zoom and Facebook. On Zoom, normally it's shown below. Look for three little dot icon. If you don't see it, pop up. And Renee Turner is monitoring Zoom for questions, and she's doing the posting there. Hi, Renee. You look fabulous. I love that pink. Let's see. On Facebook, we have Larry Hansen monitoring Facebook Live for the chat there and posting there. Hi, Larry. You look fabulous too. Everybody looks fabulous tonight. Anyway, stick around for the after talk posted on our Historical Tea and Dance Friends page or in the email that you received when you registered. You'll have the link there. There is a quick little sign up for that lets you in, and we're looking forward to that. We will answer any questions we don't get to in the after talk, and Chip's gonna talk about some other stuff that he's not bringing up in the web chat, so you'll want to stick around for that. Of course, thank you and welcome back to Karen Axelrod for her concert every Tuesday live on Facebook. We're putting that in our invitation nowadays too, so because we love it so much. So yes, thank you, Karen. All right, we're going to jump into a bio on Chip. Chip Prince has spent decades playing keyboards for and occasionally conducting musicals in New York and on national tours. He started dancing modern Western squares in the 70s. He then later started dancing Contra in English with a little Scottish country dance thrown in just for good measure. In the early 2000s, he began playing for his various different dance communities, which is how we all got to know him, I'm sure. Chip was on the musical staff for Pinewoods English Week in 2018 and in Heydays in 2019. And please welcome Chip Prince. We're so happy to have him with us. Chip, there you are.
Oh, here I am, like magic, I'm there. Thank you,
You
Darlene.
are. Great to have you with us tonight.
And thank you in advance to Lindsay and Renee and Larry for all the work that you do behind the scenes. And Darlene, thank you for your excellent advice and editing help. Wow, I can't believe I'm talking to like a couple hundred people right now that I can't see, which is probably best. But before we get into the five things, let me just say, it's weird for me to think of spending an hour talking about myself. It feels very narcissistic, and I hope that in so doing that I will at least say some things that you'll say, oh yeah, I get that, or I feel that way too, or something like that. So having said that, I kind of give this meeting, if you will, a subtitle, Diary of a Dilettante. And let me explain why I call it that. When I was in college, I had a piano teacher who berated me because I wasn't practicing enough. I wasn't practicing my solo literature enough. He was right, it was my fault. I was always playing for singers or violinists or for shows or whatever. I was doing everything but playing the solo piano literature, which, you know, I liked well enough, but it wasn't me, it wasn't my thing. So he called me a dilettante because I dabbled and dabbled and dabbled in this and that. Well, years later, I would like to think that being a dilettante has turned out to be my strength. It has allowed me to move in a lot of different communities and do a lot of different things, and to some extent be employed at times when, if I had zeroed in on one thing, I might not have been. So anyway, I'll let you be the judge of whether being a dilettante is a good thing or not as we speak. And it's time for thing one.
Thing number one, no one told me it was hard.
So we're going to go way back to the beginning. I was born and grew up in a small town in New Hampshire, Lancaster, New Hampshire. It's north of the White Mountains. It's right on the Vermont border. It's very cold in the winter. Small, picturesque town. We have a photo of me in that period. There we go. Wasn't I adorable? Look at that. Anyway, I was the last of 4 kids, 3 girls close together, and then 10 years later, me. I was the only boy, and I was the youngest, so of course I was pretty spoiled. The next picture is of my mother holding me, and my mother was very interesting. She was very proud of her schooling and her education. She was educated in a one-room schoolhouse and came out just fine. Very literate, did crossword puzzles, all that kind of stuff. She did not trust the public schools to teach me how to read. So she did it herself. And this is what she did. She would read to me from books. You know, great books like James Fenimore Cooper and, you know, poems and things, not necessarily kiddie literature. And I would be looking at the book with her, and she would move her finger along the words as she read them. And so at some point, I was probably, you know, 3, not quite 4. I don't know how old I was. But I have a dim memory of this. I said to her, just try this. Read for a while without moving your finger, and then stop, and I'll tell you where you are. And I was successful. So that's basically how my mother got me started reading. Okay, so more about reading later. Next photo is my dad. This is a picture that that actually Darlene enhanced for me, so it's obviously very beat up and everything. It's a rare and precious photo because, first of all, my dad didn't have a lot of pictures taken of him during his life, and this is the only one I'm aware of him and me together. So my dad was born in 1912. He had been a multi-instrumental musician in his youth. He'd played in dance bands in the 20s and 30s. But ultimately, to support his family, he worked as a tank and pump contractor for service stations. He had an older sister named Rilma, whom I never met. We do have a photo of her. She was born in 1901, and she used to play barrel house piano. Here comes Aunt Rilma. When I look at this picture, I realize the family resemblance. She looks an awful lot like my dad, or like my oldest sister, Linda. Anyway, I never got to hear her play. I'm not even 100% sure I ever met her. But Aunt Rilma used to play barrel house piano. That's what they referred to it as. I guess a lot of ragtime, boogie-woogie perhaps. And so I came from a musical family, certainly on my dad's side. All right. By the time I was born, Dad was not a professional musician anymore, but he played bass. He had played other instruments when he was younger, but he played bass and a jazz quartet on Saturday nights at the Elks Club across the river in Vermont. I was just a kid, so I never got to go, but they did make some recordings and I got to hear them, so that was really great. They played Moonlight in Vermont. They played a jazzy version of A Hard Day's Night, if you can believe that. They played a tune called Cute. Anyway, right. So Dad worked very hard and was not really very available to me. Not his fault. He was just tired when he would get home, and and then he had his Saturday night dances. But there were two things that he did, two talks that he had with me, which I remember and cherish. One was after I had been playing piano for a while. I couldn't have been more than maybe 10 or so. I remember Dad saying, whatever you do with the piano, make sure you have a strong bass line. Make sure you have a strong left hand, because the bass is the foundation. Well, he was a bass player, so of course he would say that. But he's absolutely right. That has served me very, very well. The other thing that he did, and this is even more special to me, there were a bunch of his old instruments, clarinet, saxophone, some old things that were gathering dust in the attic. I found some of those, and I found this cornet. I am not going to play it for you because I'm terrible, and the instrument is old and tarnished. But for whatever reason, Dad decided it would be fun to show me how to play a C scale on the cornet. So he showed me the fingerings, and so I learned a C scale. And then after I did that, I said, oh, okay, so this valve does that, and that one is a half step, and so then I did the math, and I figured out kind of how brass instruments worked. That served me, whoops, there goes my mouthpiece. That served me pretty well later on as I started to pick up other instruments. So going back to how I started playing piano, when I was almost 5, I guess, my youngest sister Anna was playing from a book, the Fireside Book of Folk Songs. We do have an image of that. And maybe some of you will recognize this book. It's a book that I think a lot of families had in the 50s and 60s. There was a song that she used to play called Bendemeer's Stream, and it goes like this. And I apologize, by the way, for how out of tune this piano is right now. So I watched Anna play, and she, taught me things like, she taught me chopsticks and some of those other things. But I watched her play Bendemeer's Stream, and I started to imitate her. So I learned it by ear, and then I did something that I didn't think was strange, but everybody else thought was remarkable. The music was there on the piano, and I made the association between the dots on the page and the keys I was playing. And so anybody in my family will tell you I taught myself to read music. I'm not going to dispute that. I, don't really remember the process. But no one told me it was something I shouldn't know how to do. No one told me it was hard, so I just did it. My oldest sister, Linda, is musical too. She never pursued it as a career. She became a librarian. But she went to college when I was 2, so I didn't see her at home much except during the summers. One summer, she brought one of her music professors home to visit us. She suspected that I had what they call perfect pitch, which she also has. So her professor tested me. He wanted to make sure I wouldn't be cheating by watching him, so he sent me just out of the room, and he'd play a note, and I'd say, that's a G, and he'd play another note, and I'd say, that's a B. And, and then he might have said, okay, sing me an F, and I'd go, and I was right. That sort of thing. So anyway, up to that point, I had thought, if you do music, if you are a musician, that's just something you can do. I didn't know it was different for anybody. So anyway, perfect pitch is, I think, a misnomer. Some people also use absolute pitch. I prefer the term pitch recognition. It means that I can, identify an A flat when I hear it, or if somebody plays a D flat sharp 11 chord, I can tell that's what it is. For most of us who have it, I think it's approximate. I might not necessarily give that F. I might give an F that's a little lower, a little higher. You can be spot on, or you can be off. It might be blood sugar. When you get older, the skill can go away a little bit. Anyway, I did not have piano lessons right away. My mother waited until I was almost 10, and the teacher she wanted was available. His name was Howard Peachy, and he ran the movie theater in our town. On the stage was a piano on one side of the stage and behind a curtain, and that's where I would go for my weekly lessons, which I really only had about a year and a half of with him. But Howard taught me my scales. He taught me how to finger scales and how to practice them, which I still never want to do. He taught me Bach, he taught me Beethoven, he taught me Chopin. And I think this is why my mother wanted me to study with him. He also taught me ragtime. And so I learned to play. This was before the Sting movie came out, so no one was playing The Entertainer yet. It wasn't, big in the public consciousness, but there was Maple Leaf Rag, And there was another tune, and this was kind of the biggie. It's called Kitten on the Keys. And, it starts out, and it goes on from there. And kind of the idea of that song. By the way, I think we have a cover for this, an image of the cover of this, right? And also of the music, so you can see what it looked like. I got these off the internet. So I was very glad that I learned this particular rag, because I wound up using it in a lot of situations when I got older. Okay, so because I was the only kid in town who could play the piano at all in any useful manner, I got called on to do it all. I learned by doing. I played for singers. I learned a bunch of other instruments, not very well, but then I learned to arrange. My band teacher recruited me to play euphonium. And that was the instrument I played all through high school, and for a couple of years of college. My drama director chose me to music direct You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown for our high school. So no one told me that I shouldn't be able to do that, so I just did it. I was a Mormon in those days, so I decided to go to Brigham Young, which was where good Mormon kids wanted to go. So I dove into serious classical music study, and I sang and toured with the a cappella choir. We have a picture of us in Poland. So I got to do a lot of traveling, I have to say. It was later on in my college career that I learned to play pop music and jazz music. And it took me 11 years to get my Bachelor of Arts degree, because I was always performing instead of taking classes. But I am not sorry that I did it that way. And now it's time for thing 2.
Yes, it is. Thing number 2. The right place at the right time.
So in 1981, I got my first summer job between semesters at school, playing in my first summer theater job, playing piano at the Pink Garter Theater in Jackson, Wyoming. This is the cast. Look at me over there on the left with that tiny beginning of a mustache. That was the first time I had one, and ever since then I'm almost never not had one. The show that we did that year was it was a review show. It wasn't a show whose name you would know. And it was the first show that I ever did that lasted more than just a couple of weekends. It lasted all summer long. I made some good friends that summer, had a good time. A couple of years later, then I got hired to music direct the summer musicals at Sundance Summer Theater in Provo, Utah, Provo Canyon. If you know the name Sundance, that's Robert Redford's property. Before the Film Institute was there, the theater was there. We did Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, Sound of Music, Annie, The Unsinkable Molly Brown, and I started to develop a little bit of a resume. So once, a drummer friend of mine was about to leave to go work on a cruise ship. And he told me, I didn't understand why he was doing this, but he told me, put a resume together and give me a copy, and I'm going to give it to the contractor who hires the musicians on these cruise ships. So I did that, and then I forgot about it for 3 years. And in the course of those 3 years, I finally graduated. I left Provo. I moved to Salt Lake City, worked some temp jobs, came out as gay. This is kind of important. And did some local theater as well. Nothing big. I was scraping by. But guess what happened next? My resume turned out to be in the right place at the right time. Out of the blue, I got a call from that contractor. A music director had hurt his back. He was supposed to be going on board a ship with a new review show, and they needed somebody to replace him post-haste. So they flew me to LA, where I did a very quick official audition, and then to New York, where I rehearsed a little bit with the review cast, and then I went on the ship and worked for 5 months on. This was a Holland America cruise, by the way. It was the Rotterdam was the ship. That cruise ship gig led to another cruise ship gig, which led to another cruise ship gig over a period of 2 years. By the end of those 2 years, I had met somebody, and I had visited him in Palm Springs, and so I moved to Palm Springs to be with him. That was my big move, my big escape from Utah. Not that Utah is bad, but I just needed to get out of there. While I was in Palm Springs, I joined the Musicians Union. Didn't get a lot of work, but I didn't really need to. I was in good shape. The next time that I was in the right place at the right time was in 1991. I was visiting Salt Lake, and my friend Candy Marchesi, who was an old college friend that I had performed with, she was playing Eponine in the tour of Les Miserables. I tried to get a ticket. I couldn't. It was sold out. Les Mis always sells out in Salt Lake. That's just how they are. But Candy phoned me and said, find something black to wear. Come and sit in the pit for tonight's performance. I'm going to introduce you to our conductor, and he wants to talk to you. Well, it turned out that they were one of the keyboard players, and there were 3 on that tour. One of the keyboard players was about to leave the show and go back to college, finish his degree, and they were looking for somebody to replace him. And rather than trust the folks in New York to send somebody out that might not turn out to be what they wanted, they listened to Candy, and I had an interview, and I played for the guy, and 3 weeks later, I had a job on the tour of Les Mis. This was huge for me. This was the beginning of a Broadway level career for me. I was just over 30. So I had that job for 4 years. The tour went on, but I left because I just needed to. That's a long story. Part of it is that by then my partner had passed away. And yes, it was AIDS. Those were the times. So one musical theater job leads to another. Actors audition, musicians network. I did tours of Sunset Boulevard and Miss Saigon. And then I met a new partner during that time. And then in 1998, I dared to move to New York. Remember the show Ragtime? When I saw it in LA, I said, I want to play that piano part. Well, after I moved to New York, I was able to get in touch with the man who played that piano part. And it turned out he was in desperate need of subs. So I practiced my butt off and wound up subbing for him. And then 3 months after that, when he left the show, he recommended me to replace him. So, wow, that was amazing to me. Ragtime closed, and I subbed in other shows. Another show that I did was La Boheme on Broadway. This was Baz Luhrmann, the movie director, you know, Moulin Rouge. He brought that opera to Broadway in Italian. I got to be in the pit most of the time, but sometimes I would rotate into the track. That's what we call it, the track where I got to play piccolo on stage in a marching band that would march onto the stage, play, and then go back off. So there I am with my piccolo. Okay, so there's a lot I could say about being a pianist and music director in the Broadway business, but I'm not going to do that. I don't have time. But I want to refer you to a podcast interview with a friend of mine named Jason Lofredo. So that's the link to that is going to go into the chat. Jason was most recently the music director of Kinky Boots. I think the podcast is really, really interesting, so I recommend it. Okay, and now it is time for Thing 3.
Thing 3, that's right. Thing 3. So many things to do. Embraced by dance.
But Chip, how did you get involved in dancing? I'm glad you asked. This is a love story, or several love stories. You'll hear me say I fell in love over and over a bunch of times. Back in New Hampshire, I knew nothing about dance, except that I wanted to learn. You know, high school dances at that time were you go out on the floor and you wiggle. I didn't like the music. I didn't like this. I didn't get it. But I knew that there was such a thing as partner dancing, and I wanted to learn it. So when I got to BYU, which is, by the way, famous for its performance dance teams and award-winning, you know, ballroom dance and that sort of thing, I signed up for beginning dance classes, which you can take for PE credit. So I did as much of that as I could get away with. I took beginning ballroom, where I learned to waltz and foxtrot and some other things. Beginning Latin, beginning folk, and even beginning square dance. There was an actual Western Squares caller who taught that class. At the end of the semester, you essentially knew mainstream. You could be a mainstream dancer. You could go to any club that danced mainstream. I really had a good time in that class. I loved being told what to do. I loved learning the vocabulary and training myself to react to it. You know, it's star through, do this, square through, do that, you know, all of that stuff. I love the patterns. I love the interactions among all the dancers in the square. And I liked all my dance classes. I really had a good time. But square dance was the one that really stuck with me and that I returned to later. But first, I had to finish college. And so dance got left behind for quite a while. After I graduated and left BYU and moved to Salt Lake and came out, I was not a bar person, but socialization only really happened at gay bars. But what I liked was that at the time, country western dancing was really in. So we could go and do line dances and two-steps. So that was a cool thing. And I discovered that I liked not only dancing with another man, but I discovered I could follow. I didn't have to lead anymore. I could follow, and I was good at it. That really opened my eyes. So some years later, when I was on a break from touring, I learned that a gay square dance club was being started in Palm Springs. I started attending the classes, and since I had learned the boys' part before, I thought, well, I want to learn the girls' part this time. You know, more twirling and all that kind of thing. Here's a little sidebar. Gay square dancing had gotten going in the early 1980s, and as it spread, you know, there started to be this gay square dance association of different clubs. They had to standardize some things, make some decisions on their own about rules, terminology, that sort of thing. Other dance communities have addressed the gender issue in a lot of different ways. Some have rebelled against gender signifiers, some have rebelled against power signifiers like follow and lead and that sort of thing. The square dancers decided to keep the terms gent and lady, or boy and girl, for a bunch of reasons, and I think one of them was that we were always dancing to recordings. And sometimes we didn't have a caller, so we had to dance to a recordings that a caller had made, and they were going to use those terms, and we needed to know who we were. Also, the live callers, same thing. They, there's so much talking. This talking never stops in square dancing. So it was going to be clunky for them to change their terminology. Anyway, that's part of my theory. I have other ideas. I know a lot of people have strong feelings about this, but I celebrate the fact that different communities have come up with different solutions to the issues of gender and dance roles and that sort of thing. Anyway, I still square dance to this day. Even though I do other things, I still love to square dance. When I was a brand new mainstream square dancer in 1996, I went to my first dance weekend in Phoenix, Arizona. And while I was there, I met this guy. And he's about to appear. There we go. This is John Botter. He became my partner. And that's what we looked like then. And 15 years later, we looked like that. Now it's nearly 25 years later. We're still together. And we still square dance, not as often as we used to. I do it a little bit more often than he is, but I'm connected with the dance communities. He works. He's earning the money for the family right now. So, Contra and English. When did I discover them? That didn't happen until after I moved to New York. About 2000, I stumbled on the then brand new gender-free Contra group that was dancing at the Gay and Lesbian Center in New York. And when I went and I started dancing with these people and started to learn the terms armbands and bare arms for the dance roles, I was hooked. I wasn't as happy about the terms because they were confusing to me sometimes. They both had B words in them, but that's okay. I loved the people, and I loved the live music. Oh my gosh, we could dance to live music. That's something that square dancers almost never do. Anyway, the armbands and bare arms thing, some of you may know, that group has now changed, as a lot of groups have that used to use that terminology. Now people say larks and ravens, or they say larks and robins to signify the different dance roles, if you even need to have different dance roles. Personally, I welcome any change that opens up possibilities of people getting to dance with whoever they want to dance with. And that's all I'll say about that. That group is called Village Contra. It was an offshoot of the Lavender Country Folk Dancers in the Boston area and is a part of the bigger LCFD network that has, groups in California and other places across the U.S. The people in that group told me if I wanted to contra dance more often, there was another group that did it every Saturday night, CDNY. So I went, and that was fun. They used, ladies and gents, but whatever. I was cool with all of it. Those people told me that on Tuesday nights, there's this thing called English dancing. Well, when I went, I fell in love all over again. Live music, beautiful music, with varying tempos, varying meters, different formations, figures, partner interactions. I don't need to sell this to most of you folks. You know what I'm talking about. It's gorgeous. This was something new to me. The collars. oh my gosh, they were so knowledgeable, so scholarly, down to earth, enthusiastic, um, and in love with the dances, and in love with teaching them, in love with the process, loving sharing them with us. So I have to give a shout out at this point to the first people that I danced to in New York: Sharon Green, Paul Ross, Beverly Francis, Jean Moreau. When I was working, when I was doing shows and stuff, I would look forward to a Tuesday night that I was off, just so I could go and dance. And sometimes I'd even take a Tuesday off for a special occasion so I could go and dance. This is about when I made friends with Chris Ricciotti. Chris, if you don't know who he is, Chris was the founder, or certainly one of the founders, of the gender-free movement in Jamaica Plain, Boston area. And he has his own whole story to tell, which I hope he gets to do here sometime. But anyway, people introduced me to him online, and we were AOL chat buddies. And I thought, I've got to meet this guy. So I finally took the train to Boston in 2001 to attend their Harvest Ball. And we hit it off just great. And we're wonderful friends to this very day. I fell in love again with that community. The gender-free folks I mean, to me, that's where it all started. I know there was a simultaneous movement that happened in Portland, Oregon, and some other places, but that's the group that I met first. Those people are my family. I try to go to the twice yearly dance camps whenever I can. You know, anyway, so back in New York, while I was dancing, I eventually started to think, I wonder if I could play this. Maybe I could be useful at the piano too. So there was one Tuesday night when CDNY had an English dance where a bunch of us got to take turns playing the piano. A lady named Margarita Davis took notice. Her husband George was a fiddler, and he was the band leader of the band Hudson Crossing. And sadly, the band doesn't exist anymore. Both George and Margarita have passed away. Now, I do have a photo of George here at the fiddle, and there's me at the piano. I don't remember exactly where this is taken. This was probably at Circle Lodge at one of those fundraising weekends that we had. Anyway. Yeah, and there I am playing piano for the variety show, which they were calling the Cabaret. You see Beverly Francis behind me. I think I stayed parked at that piano all night. I think that particular night, that talent show, I wound up playing for almost all the acts. Hudson Crossing got to play at a lot of things. We were sometimes among the first to see new dances that Gary Rudman had just written, which is very exciting. There's an event called the Dance Flurry that happens every February in Saratoga Springs. And for a couple of years in a row, for several years in a row, Hudson Crossing got to play at that. There's a story that I will not tell about the third time that I went there, the year of the blackout. Anyway. I was always in awe of the bands that played for Contra dances, and sometimes I wondered if that was something I could do. My chance finally came when in 2008 there was a dance in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and Danny Elias and Marnin Labo-Kozer suddenly needed a pianist at the last minute, and they said, "Come on, Chip, just jam with us." So I went along, and there was some music, but we didn't get to rehearse. I just jammed with them at the dance, and we had so much fun. We decided to call ourselves a band. We didn't have a name at first, but we came up with it. Because the first gig was in Bethlehem, we decided to call ourselves the Three Wise Guys. So here we are with Ted Crane at one of the times that we played in Bethlehem. We went back to Bethlehem a few times and played some other gigs. Not many, because it was rare that all three of us were available at the same time. Over the years, I played a lot of gigs, though, with both English and Contra, with Marnin and with Danny. So there's one more story I have to tell you that happened in 2004. I was riding up to LCFD camp with my friend Dan Collins. Massachusetts legislature had just legalized same-sex marriage. And so we were feeling very celebratory about that and thinking, maybe somebody should write a dance to commemorate this. So Dan and I talked some more and started to think, well, what would that dance be like? Oh, there should probably be some same-gender role interactions, maybe a lot of them. So I had never written a tune or written a dance before. But that night, after the opening evening of dance camp, I could not sleep. All night long, I could not sleep. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be awake anyway, let me see if I can compose a dance in my head. So I kind of thought through it, and it took me all night to write it. The next morning, I wrote it down. And I called the dance Boston Marriage. At first, I used a show tune that I decided later on was not really the best choice of music. So I wrote a tune to go with it. And this is it. So I neglected, I think I caught Lindsay by surprise because I didn't say what I was going to say before it started. That is a cello, and that is Ilya Levitin. It's not Marnin on viola. And that is from a recording that Ilya and I made to send to Chris Ricciardi so that he could use it as a dance. Chris has championed this dance. He has used it a lot at gender-free camps. It's not really known in the general dance community, just in the gender-free community. Anyway,
Well,
thank you for listening to that.
let me just say it is going to get known because we have the music and the dance notes, and we've started a new general purpose 5 Things Dropbox. They're getting the link posted in the chat box, and you will find a copy of that beautiful music and that lovely dance in there. So I think people are going to be starting to dance it around the country once we get back to dancing with each other. It's a beautiful tune. You'll hear the entire tune, by the way, at the end of this 5 things, so make sure you stick around for that. All right, we're going to move into thing number 4. It's really good. On the road again.
Okay, on the road again, yes. So Broadway work is always a little uncertain, so I've always had to freelance. One job I really liked was being accompanist for the New York City Gay Men's Chorus. That was a big deal to me because it was a very well-known group, and you know, there I am. We're performing at an AIDS walk here, by the way, so that's why we're outdoors and there's not the whole group there. So I enjoyed that a lot, but it was still only a part-time job. I did some playing for English, for Tuesday night English dances, but it was still, hard to make ends meet. So the thing that saved me from this situation, and by the way, this is 2009 when this happened, and remember we had a recession about then. I was lucky. The Mary Poppins tour came calling. They needed an extra pianist, what they call a swing pianist, somebody who would play in the pit on the nights when one of the other pianists was either conducting or taking a night off or whatever. So that was not the majority of my job. The majority of my job was, I did eventually conduct the show too. The majority of my job was playing daytime rehearsals, but I had a lot of evenings off. So when we were in Houston, Denver, Atlanta, Seattle, if there was a local dance, I really tried to find it. I tried to get there if I could. That was really fun. So the next photo is, the tour ended in Mexico City. And this photo is of the last time that I conducted the show. That sombrero has a story behind it. If you want to know the story behind this sombrero, which, by the way, I managed somehow to get home on the plane, I will tell you in the after talk. But I have to move on. There's more things to talk about. After Mary Poppins, I did do a couple more tours. One of them was Porgy and Bess. And while I was with Porgy and Bess, we were in St. Paul, Minnesota, and my friend Neil took this photo. Check this out. That's the synthesizer that I was playing on. And all these other instruments, all these other people around me, crowded into that pit. I can't imagine being in a place so crowded anymore. You can't really get the whole effect unless you see the whole pit. But I was very happy to see Neil, and I was happy to be doing that job, so there's that photo. The next tour that I did after Porgy and Bess was Newsies. Sometimes we would do AIDS benefits. And so, well, Lindsay, let them see what I did here. Yeah, I did that. I borrowed that tuba, and the fellow in the tux singing wanted to sing When Yuba Plays the Tuba Down in Cuba. And so we put together a little arrangement, and that's something that I did. Those AIDS benefits were important for us, not only because of the cause, but because they provided variety. When you do the same show 8 times a week, sometimes you just want to do something else. So this gave us a chance to learn other songs and to perform other things. I was lucky that a few times that tours took me to the Cincinnati area, and time and occasion permitting, I would sometimes get to play for Contras with Carl and Deborah Colon, who have whose duo is called Changeling. So here's a photo of me playing with them, jamming again, because they never had any music for me. I just had to listen to what they were doing and try to match it. Those two are fabulous all by themselves. They also play with a drummer, and they're called Wild Rumpus when they play with the drummer. And I'm honored that they would have me sometimes play with them. Okay. Other things that I managed to do while I was touring was to continue to go to IAGSDC conventions and kick up my heels and wear my kilt and twirl. So here I am at a plus dance, if you know what plus is, one day. Yeah, it twirled up, to quote Shirley MacLaine. Okie dokie. And if you're ready, I'm ready for thing 5. Are you ready?
We are ready. And you are not ready to retire.
Oh, not ready to retire yet. Well, these are strange times. I don't know what's going to go on. But I already had a taste of being unemployed because after my last tour ended, Broadway and other theatrical work turned out to be harder for me to get. There are lots of reasons for that, not the least of which is that I'm older now, and younger people who are doing all the hiring are hiring other younger people that they know. It's hard for me to get their attention. I'm not going to blame all of it on that, but that was part of it. So I had to widen my net a little bit for freelance work. Fortunately, the dance community stepped up and started using me some more. CDNY started using me more and more for English. I think there's a photo of me with Naomi Morse and Barbara Greenberg. We're playing at, I think we're playing at the Playford Ball. So that was a thing. Sorry about all the jingles that you're hearing. Somebody's texting me and I don't have the sound turned off on my phone. So I love playing with those two. They are brilliant, individually and together. And there's another photo of me doing something that I hadn't demonstrated to you before. And that's playing the melodica and the piano at the same time. If you don't know what a melodica is, it's basically like an accordion keyboard that you blow into. So you are the bellows to the thing. I'm not going to play True Kit like I was going to. Anyway, one of the things I like about the melodica is that you can play it outdoors and it really carries. That's handy for Abbott's Bromley, or if you want to play for Morris dancing or sword or something. It's very, very handy for that. I have done both of those things. So I want to thank Elizabeth Friedman for the many times that she booked me to play English at CDNY. I also got to fill in for a pianist, for various pianists. In particular, I got to play with Brooklyn Swing Ensemble and Grand Picnic for Contra, so I got to do that. This is the pinnacle, though. Robin Hayden called me, and I was really, really surprised. Actually, she emailed me, and I was really surprised to ask me to be on staff for Pinewoods English Week 2018. I had always wanted to go to Pinewoods, but I'd never quite been able to. It either didn't work out or it was expensive. Sometimes I could afford it, but then when I could afford it, I was busy. So, whatever. Anyway, I got to go and be on staff. And then the next year, Brooke Friendly had me at HTDS, another wonderful, wonderful English dance week. I was in heaven. I got to dance whenever I wasn't playing. I got to play whenever I wasn't dancing. And there was more than that. There was camp culture, things like pub sings, porch jams, sharing times, swimming in the lake and at Pinewoods, and sometimes singing Sacred Heart music. If you know anything about that, it's an amazing thing to do if you like community singing. Even the staff meetings were kind of fun, sort of. Anyway, if I never get to do that again, at least I'll be able to say I did it, and not just once, but twice, once on each coast. So other things that I've done, I joined the Lesbian Gay Big Apple Corps marching band, and had a blast with that. That's a volunteer thing. They're a huge gay band. They march with over 100 people. You can't see the whole band in this photo. It's fun and a little bit of activism. I've sung in church choirs. In this photo, it's Easter, and we've called extra people up from the congregation to sing the Hallelujah chorus. And the choir master was busy at the organ, so he needed somebody to conduct, so I got to do that. Go figure. Somebody, an actor friend, thought I might be a good Santa Claus. So there I am. That is my beard. Now I colored it a little extra white, but that is all me. That is me. The tummy is not all me. I had a pad on. Anyway, somebody asked about Santa Claus and what lessons did I learn from being Santa Claus? I will answer that. When you put on the suit, you have a responsibility. Santa Claus is acting. I'm not a good actor, but I can adopt the Santa Claus persona. But when I'm in uniform, it's important to be Santa Claus, not to let that drop. Because people expect certain things, especially kids. So that's the lesson I learned about Santa Claus. Don't let it drop. And you know what? That's not a bad thing. Being Santa is a good thing. Okay, other things I've done for work, collaborating with cabaret singers. My friend Evangelia Kingsley and I have done several cabaret shows together. This is one of them called Never Say Never. I hope I get to work with Evangelia again. And another person that I met in a restaurant, of all places, is Ariana Armon. This is us at Spoonfed. She and I have done a few open mic nights where she hosts, sings a couple numbers, and then I'm at the piano and people bring their stuff to me. They might have music or they might not, but they ask me to play for them. Wow. That's great fun, but sometimes it's like totally scary. But I love it. Anyway, one day Ariana and I were at Lincoln Center, and we went to one of those, if you've ever heard of those Sing for Hope pianos, we went over to one of those. They're just pianos that are out in public places for anyone to play. And we decided to do a little Glitter and Be Gay. So here's a tiny clip of Glitter and Be Gay.
And can I just point out that like Chip was playing that from memory?
So of course I was happy to have Ariana point out that I was, which anyway, those weren't even the highest notes she sang in the thing, by the way. She added a couple extra ones in the middle. All right, I have one more clip to play for you. There was another Sing for Hope piano in my neighborhood, close to where I live, 150th and Broadway, if anybody knows where that is in New York. Nearby in Riverside Park, there was one of these pianos, and when I saw it, I said, I have to play something and I have to record it. So I dusted off Kitten on the keys. Here's a little bit of that.
No pedal.
Yeah. So if you didn't hear what I said near the beginning, I was saying no pedal. I had played up to that point in the piece without realizing that the pedal didn't work. And all of a sudden I wanted it and it wasn't there. Which takes me back to the pedal that didn't work on the piano that I had at home growing up. When I started, it didn't matter that the pedal didn't work because my feet couldn't have reached it anyway. So we've gone full circle with that. There's all these things that kept me busy and kept me occupied and sometimes helped me pay the rent. But there's still no place that I would rather be, I think, than sitting at the piano, wearing a kilt, playing beautiful music with other musicians, watching and being in the service of dancers. So that is my story. Being a dilettante has got me where I am. And I hope I didn't bore you with this. There's a lot of information here, a lot of life story that I told. And if you wind me up, I can just go and go and go. But, you know. So at this point, I want to really thank Darlene, Lindsay, Renee, Larry for all your help, the technical support, Darlene for her editing help, and other suggestions. And thank you all for being here and listening to me, listening to my story.
Thank you, Chip. It's been great. And we have questions, but they're going to be in the after talk. But we have one important question. Either what's your favorite dance, or what's your favorite tune that you love to play that brings you joy?
I knew those questions were coming up, and I could take I could cheat and say my favorite tune is the one I'm playing at the moment. Often that is true. It's not always true. Sometimes there are some tunes I have trouble getting into. You know, and I think it's usually because I just don't know them yet. And some of the older ones, some of the jig tunes from the 16th and 17th, I mean the 17th and 18th century, some of those are like, I don't know what those chords should be. And I think maybe Kate didn't either. But she came up with the best thing that she could, but I don't know what to do with this, and you know, but you know, I enjoy playing them all. I always learn something from every time that I get to play a tune in a dance. A couple of the smooth ones that I really, really, really like are, let's see, there's Mignonette. I don't remember it exactly, but there's that one. There's, of course, Tom Kruskel's for Sapphire Sea. I like playing the Bishop, partly because the Bishop was probably the very first triple minor dance that I ever danced. And I started at the very top, so I got to be a #1 man all the way down. And that was great fun. And, you know, so some of the first things that you learn stick with you. You know, they've stuck with me. So I hope that's helpful. I didn't really answer the question, but I did about as well as I could.
That's okay. As I know, a lot of people can't really say one, but everybody always wants to know. It started to be a buzz thing at the beginning, and it's kind of fun to ask. So, oh, go ahead.
Well, one more thing I want to say is any tune by Dave Weisler or Jonathan Jensen or Rachel Bell, I'm there. They're not the only ones. There are others. I don't want to, if any of you other, you know, composers are here and say, well, why didn't he mention me? I'm sorry, but those three are the first ones that I come up with. Jonathan Jensen, Dave Weisler, Rachel Bell.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you so much, Chip, for joining us and joining us in the after talk in just a few minutes. I want to give a shout out thank you to our Five Things team, Lindsay Verbal, and in the background, Renee Turner and Larry Hansen, and with our helpers, Reed Wilson and Kara King and Linda Nelson. We couldn't do it without you all. You make it so easy. Colin Hume has archived all our web chats on his website, and we'll be posting the link for that. So thank you, of course, always to Colin for that. And a big thank you to the folks who have been sending in donations, because it helps cover the expenses to put on the show. Really appreciate it. The gang is posting the after talk link now, but stick around. Don't leave yet. You want to stay for what's at the very end. Let me tell you first, though, coming up next week, On September 15th is Louise Siddons. I'm very excited. Louise is one of the hardest working folks in our community right now, and probably before too. She's sharing her love of English country dance and Contra far and wide through calling, mentoring, running workshops for dancers, callers, and organizers. She's creator of both the new Contra Dance Callers Starter Kit and her pioneering Wednesday walkthroughs. And she's a past recipient of the CDSS Judson Foster Fund Award. Louise is helping to ensure that English country thrives for decades to come. The registration is open now. You're going to want to join us for that one. Coming on Saturday, September 19th, not this Saturday, but the following one, our third Saturday historical dance web chat with Paul Cooper. I've mentioned him before. He's an enthusiastic researcher into Regency era dancing. He volunteers with Early Dance. He's lots of fun. He's so passionate about what he wants, what he's doing. So I hope you'll join us for that. It's on a Saturday morning or afternoon if you're East Coast, or evening if you're in England. And then coming on Saturday, October 3rd, we will be having our concepts in Iyengar Yoga for Dancers class with Anna Rain. We have not yet opened the registration, but we will be probably this week. The mailing list for class details and to be first on the list for signing up for that is going to be posted in the chat. I keep forgetting to tell you to join us for tea time on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. It's a social hour of friendship and fun. If you are just looking for a break in the week with friendly folk, join us. Email us or drop into our Historical Tea and Dance Society Friends Facebook page around 4:30 on Thursdays Pacific time. You'll find out more. I have to tell you about a lot of events today. I have to tell you about one other event, and then you all can feel free to post yours after that. Chip Prince and Others, a virtual concert gig economy on Saturday, September 12th. It's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. It's put on by CDMY, and it's going to be the wildest mashup yet. And we're going to post the information and basic link for that. I don't have a direct sign-up link for that, but the Zoom link will be made available once you go to those directed places. Chip wanted to end with something that's very much Chip. I love it. We're going to hear a full version of his beautiful Mass Waltz, and as we've gotten to know Chip over the week, we know how much people mean to him, and people love him, and he loves people, and he really wanted to sort of honor those people that mean a lot to him in his life and in our community. So we're showing a slideshow, and at the end of the slideshow will be the donation, and check the chat box because there's a lot of information in the chat box about who he just wanted to send a thank you out to. And yeah, so with that, start that slideshow, and then at the end of it, we'll see you in about 2 minutes for the after talk.
Thank you, Chip.